Hello, everyone. And welcome to this month's fireside chat. Before we get started, I just really want to ask you guys a question, just to be real for a minute. You know that feeling when you are crushing it at work but dying inside? Or when you're the strong one everyone depends on, but you're secretly staying up at night Googling, is my boss a narcissist? Don't I know I used to do that. Especially
Mhm.
when I understood what narcissist was. Yeah, that's not just the Monday scaries or the Monday blues. That is what we call corporate PTSD. And it's time that we stop pretending that it doesn't exist. Tonight, that is exactly what we're going to be talking about is surviving toxic leadership. We're talking about healing from it and making sure that the next generations that are coming after us don't have to endure what both Cynthia and I have endured. So grab your tea, grab your cocktail, your mocktail, whatever it is, get comfortable because we're getting ready to light this torch together.
All
I
right.
am Candace Miles. I'm Candace Miles, but everyone calls me Coach C. And I'm here because I have walked the path before you. As the CEO and the lead coach of No Gap Consulting, I've made it my mission to ensure that Black and Brown women who are stepping into leadership for the very first time are not just surviving the transition, but they're beginning to thrive in it. Because I know what it feels like to get promoted and suddenly feel like you're drowning in a sea of imposter syndrome or even wondering if you belong at the table. That's why I specialize in helping women who look like me embrace authentic identity, develop bulletproof leadership skills, but most importantly, build unshakable confidence to not just take the seat at the table, but to redesign the whole dang table. Because the world needs leaders who look like us, think like us, and are not afraid to lead like us. So I always sit there and say that my motto is no gap. When there's no gap, there is no limit. And it's just leadership our way. But I am not just that. I'm also to represent the millennials. And if you have been here before, go ahead and throw that peace sign emoji in the chat and let me know you are representing the millennials. But as you can see, I'm not here by myself. I'm here with the lovely Cynthia Haley. Cynthia, how you doing, girl?
I am doing good. I'm doing good. Excited for tonight's conversation. And for those who aren't familiar, my name is Cynthia Haley, and I go by TIP Energy Coach. And the TIP stands for Transition to Infinite Possibilities. And I serve as not just the CEO, but the Chief Energy Officer. Because with Transition to Infinite Possibilities, I focus on helping corporate professionals elevate their energy so they can elevate in their careers, whether that be by interview coaching, navigating corporate challenges, what have you, and also leadership coaching. So I'm excited to be here. We have a lot to talk about. Candace talked about her generation. I will say, just to let everyone know, I'm going to forewarn you, I am Gen Z. So there may be times where I freeze up and
Gen
it's
Z?
not technology. Gen X. Oh,
Oh,
see?
look,
You see?
you
I'm
showing your
telling you.
Gen X. Look.
Gen X, you see why we need the young people to help us along. So, so yes, Gen X. But there will be times where I may take a little pause and there is no technology glitch. But but no, I'm definitely glad that we're having this conversation. 16, 17 years into leadership, I can definitely say this topic resonates well as both a leader and as an employee. So I'm definitely ready to dive into tonight's conversation. We going there? We ready?
We going there. Go
We're
go
going there.
ahead. We going there.
So, corporate PTSD. If you don't know what PTSD is, that could be a good thing. Maybe you haven't experienced it, but it is post traumatic stress syndrome and disorder. And why it's called that is simply because when you go through these corporate experiences, sometimes you come out on the other end feeling very drained, feeling like you've lost all hope, feeling like you've lost yourself, feeling like you have no other choices in life for your career because of what's happened in your past. And we just want to one address the issue, but also give you hope that there is something on the other side of this. And that's why we call it lighting the torch. We're going to hit on the issue, but we want to light your torch as well to give you something to take away from tonight's conversation. So the first thing is just recognizing the symptoms of corporate PTSD. And I'll say, there was a period, Candace, I don't know if you remember, but there was a period around quiet quitting, mass
Mhm.
resignations and all these things that were happening because people were just tired, right? And there
Mhm.
was um, a lot of mental health challenges. The concept of mental health awareness became very prominent over the last few years, and how companies have started to embrace health and wellness over the years. And so that was because there was just so much happening. People were having burnout. You overthink an email. You're creating narratives that don't exist. And, there's this level of anxiety before you go into a meeting. And then it's just like, all these negative thoughts just start to creep in. And
Mhm.
it's happening because of the experiences related to toxic leadership. And so, I wanted to tell probably one of many, sadly, stories around toxic leadership that I experienced several years ago, where um, it stemmed from being one, the only Black woman in the room, and technically the only Black in the room. And it was a room full of white men. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that who look like me, right? And here was a situation where, getting ready for a client meeting, and I, as the business owner, had all the details, all the insights. I knew what was happening, what needed to happen, could answer any question you threw at me, knew how to strategize the whole nine. Well, going into this meeting, I'm told you're not allowed to speak. Now, just
Mm.
imagine putting yourself in that situation, how it would make you feel, right? It starts to eat at your core. One, you think, well, gosh, am I just not good enough?
Mhm.
Is my voice is now being silenced. And here's the thing, whether they understood what they were doing or not, that in itself is a form of toxic leadership,
Mhm.
because your own biases are not allowing you to be inclusive.
Mhm.
And because of that, it really did get to me, psychologically, like, what is happening? Am I not allowed? Why am I not allowed to use my voice in this situation? Right. And so I share that story because it left me feeling very triggered in meetings after that. Should I speak? Should I not speak? Ooh, is it okay? Do I need to get permission? What is happening? What is
Mhm.
happening? And that was just one of many in that particular period. But I'm sure others can resonate. And Candace, I'll pass the baton to you as well. When you think of, the symptoms that come up around corporate PTSD and how it has affected maybe even you or things that you've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely resonate with your story. Yeah. Not as being told right then before going into the meeting, but being in the meeting, and being in several meetings and being told, through chat, you have a question, ask a question. And then when I do ask question, oh, this isn't a meeting for the question. And I'm like, okay, which one do you want? Because it honestly, that's where, now that we have the terminology for it, even though
Mhm.
sometimes I feel like it's overly used, but that is when imposter syndrome begins to amplify. I
Mhm.
began to question, am I truly even qualified, or did you
Right.
just simply have me in here just to be a diversity hire? That, I mean, that went through my mind too. Is I When it comes to it just, that symptom of being told to do something and being not told to do something, it started to elevate into, especially into me, when it comes to perfectionism, like feeling
Mhm.
like I had to always be perfect. And that particularly was me protecting myself, being like, well, if he, she, whoever was my boss at the time sat there and said, oh, I can't say anything, well, I'm gonna make sure that I'm overly prepared just the event, and when they tell me, give me the thumbs up and say, okay, this is your turn, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, that's a form of PTSD, because now I'm sitting here feeling anxiety, like, okay, is this
Right.
the meeting? Ooh, I know for me, my heart would start beating really fast, and I know that be between, it could be on the cuff of anxiety or me just simply being nervous, but it leaned more towards of anxiety. Like, okay, am I going to be scrutinized if I do say something?
Right. Yeah.
It,
And the tip, I think, too, one is just starting to be in tune with that
Self
emotion and that
awareness.
feeling, having that higher conscious awareness of what is happening, not so much the situation, but how you're experiencing the situation, so that you can then control how you want to show up for yourself.
Yeah.
And, really starting to say, gosh, I just spent 20 minutes just trying to type an email. Why is that? You know, or,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, I'm having heart palpitations before I walk into this meeting. Why is that?
Hmm.
And you owe it to yourself to constantly remind yourself you are good enough,
Yeah.
and not allow those voices to creep into your head to tell you otherwise.
Hmm.
Just how I see it. It's can sound easier said than done, but I would certainly say, celebrate small wins along and along. When you can tell yourself, you know what, I don't need to spend 20 minutes on this. Let me say what I need to say, and trust your instincts. Trust
Hmm.
the smarts that you have. Don't let anyone diminish that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, outside of just that in general, what we've been talking about when it comes to corporate PTSD, I also want to think about it I think about it on the flip side of, from an economic reality.
Mhm.
Just last week, can't remember if it was Thursday or Friday, but it was deemed as like Black women equal pay. Knowing that for every single person who was inside Palm, is what I call it, where we're
That's
only making
crazy.
64 cents. Listen, that is a term, and I feel like I probably need to trademark that because I keep saying it more frequently, and people be like, "Oh, I need it." But we're only making, as a Black woman, we only earn 64 cents on a dollar, knowing that I'm doing the exact same thing and sometimes better, but I'm not
Mhm.
compensated for it. That's also too a part of toxic.
Right.
Like,
Not being
pay,
valued.
not being valued, not being
Right.
valued, and I think we think about like what we were just talking about when it comes to going into the meetings not being said, like the people telling us not to say anything, but it's also too on that too from a monetary standpoint. Like, we're doing the same work that everyone else is doing, however not being compensated for it. That gets harder and harder. I
Mhm.
remember whenever I decided to switch, I was still in a leadership role, but I was working directly with our clients, and I was told, hey, this is an interim and it's supposed to be 90 days. And I think I've talked about this before. It was only supposed to be a 90-day interim, and it turned into a year and a half. And here it is. I found out that my peers, who I was helping a lot of the times because I came from the customer side of things, so my viewpoint was different.
Mm.
However, I was making half of what they were making for a year and a half.
Mhm.
That was hard. That was a hard pill to swallow, because I started thinking, well, am I not worth enough? Am I
Right.
not, like I said before, I'm over preparing. I'm going the extra mile just to get half the results, get to get half their acknowledgement. And so um I just say, like, I just wanted to point that in there, is that sometimes it do come from the value that organizations place upon people of color when it comes to the PTSD and everything like that too.
Right. There's one of the other points that we highlighted when we set this up was breaking the cycle in leadership. right? And so while these are our experiences, we now need to also think about those who are in leadership roles and the role that they play in this. And a lot of organizations have shifted to leadership development. And within that leadership development realm, it addresses things like emotional intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once upon a time, it did address unconscious biases. Uh, and, there are other courses around like psychological safety and things like that, right? And so, if there's an organization listening out here, I would certainly champion continuing to build upon that to help leaders have greater awareness around what it means to provide psychological safety for your direct reports or for your organization and what that should look and feel like. And then, even as a leader, the other piece is, how are you leading? Are you leading out of fear because of your own corporate PTSD?
Mm-hmm.
Are you leading from a place of you need to be in control, you need to micromanage because of fear that you've experienced in your past? Or you lack trust. You don't trust your department or the employees that work for you because of corporate PTSD. Something
Mm-hmm.
you've experienced where either you couldn't trust your leader or your leader made you feel like you couldn't be trusted. And so that mentality just continues to transcend, and it shows up even as in a leadership role because of your own experiences. And it's causing you to lead and now impact the people that you're now leading.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where I would challenge any person in leadership to just have that moment of self reflection and ask yourself, am I asking my team all these questions? Or am I, hovering over them because of my own insecurity or because I'm leading out of fear because
Yeah.
it happened to me? Like, create that moment of reflection for yourself so that you can break the cycle.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's crazy that you sit there and said that because I remember one of my peers how they were leading from their trauma that they
Mhm.
had received. And so that relationship when it came to trusting other individuals, they struggle with being vulnerable. And
Yeah.
so that even came to when vulnerability, it's a fine line, especially when you're in leadership where you want to show your authentic self to your employees, but not, like I said, it's a very fine line there. However, they were so closed off because of the trust issues that had happened previously because of something that happened to them before. And
Mhm.
one of the things too, like what you said when breaking the traumas, I remember telling them like, hey, I feel like you need to go back and document your trauma timeline. What does that look like? And like the incidents that actually happened at work, because sometimes we don't even know that we've actually experienced trauma at work when we have experienced it until we actually sit down and have some self-awareness and self-reflect over it. But document it to even take it a step further is sometimes you got to take it past the job and see, okay, when did I first experience this and how does that now it's showing up in my leadership role,
Yeah.
because that would allow you to be able to validate that, you know what, I've experienced this. Now I'm moving forward in this way. Now I know that this is what's happening. It's because of this. How can I now put tools in place to move forward? Whether that's you
Mhm.
get therapy, you go that route, you get a life coach, you get some type of coaching or a mentor, whatever avenue that you decide to go down. However, it just gives you a space. You could even, I sit here and say it all the time, you can go to ChatGPT, Claude AI, and say, hey, here are my traumas that I've experienced. This is how it shows up when I'm leading my team. Help me come up with a plan to whenever I'm experienced when I feel like I'm being triggered at this moment to navigate through it. And it'll jot out different things. I love to put like out of the box I put that in my chat prompt sometimes, like out of the box thing that people don't necessarily think about, because sometimes you do need an out of the box thing where people have told you over and over, hey, go to therapy. Hey, sign up for this, sign up for that. No, these things are not working. Let me try something different. And so to your point, yes, we definitely have to be self-aware that emotional intelligence is super needed. It's a skill that a lot of us have that don't even know that we have, that will help us when it comes to navigating through this.
One of the things that I coach on, so why I even insert energy coaching into my practice is for this very reason, right? And it is to increase your awareness
Mhm.
and having a sense of the energy that you're even transferring, right? How you show up in certain situations. And, real quick, I'll share that the way I look at energy is it's considered either catabolic or anabolic, right? And catabolic energy is like this negative, has a negative connotation to it, either although one is neither good or bad, but it's showing up, either defeated, like a victim mentality and things of that nature. Whereas the anabolic allows you to see the possibilities. And what I would challenge anyone, especially when you're in a leadership role, is to start to think about the energy that you're bringing to your team and to your department, and how is it allowing you to show up? And then is that how you want to show up,
Mhm.
right? And how it's affecting your team, right? Because there's the opportunity in this moment to stop and say, that's not even the me that I know to be.
Yeah.
So why am I allowing this? And then to take a moment to think about what brand or what image, what would I want to exude as a leader, right? What kind of leader would I want to experience? And
Yeah.
then are you living that? Because I have seen, oh my gosh, I have seen where leaders just they operate one in chaos, they operate in fear, they're scrambling, and it lacks strategic foresight because everything that you do is stemmed from a prior experience that you
Mhm.
had, and it's not allowing you to show up in a way that um, is going to position you for success. So it's like just having that, temperature check with yourself and having a temperature check just with your team. As a leader, you can ask your team, how are you doing today? How are you feeling? And the last point I'll make is what I strongly encourage leaders to do is have regular one-on-one conversations with your directs and even implement skip level meetings because it will teach you and show you what's happening in your space and even give you a chance to reflect and say, am I leading in the right way to get the results that I desire?
So, with you saying all that, because sometimes people they're not able to even recognize, what would you say are some subtle ways, maybe one or two ways that people may overlook that, like like your leader means they have good intentions, but it's
Mhm.
actually a toxic pattern. What are some ways that you've either experienced or that you have sometimes, I mean, I'll be honest, like sometimes I've been the toxic pattern, you
Mhm.
know, when it comes to it. What are some sort of ways where we could tell people who don't necessarily know, like, okay, how do I even notice that this is a pattern?
I can come up with two real quick. One is you're operating on fumes, right? And we tie it to burnout, right? But you're operating and you feel like you're operating at a high level, right? But really you're exhausted. You're
Mhm.
tapped out. You have a cluttered mind and you're scattered. You're all over the place, right? And you can't seem to think clearly. That in itself is uh, an outcome of toxic leadership. And I say that because, well, there could be other things happening, but a common outcome is toxic leadership. because either you don't feel supported, you don't have the structure you need, or you are feeding off your own leader's energy, right? The other thing is not getting good sleep at night.
Mhm.
You can't sleep at night because your mind is racing thinking about what you have to do the next day at work. And then you wake up in the morning, you don't feel rested because you're already rolling over on your phone looking at, okay, I got to go to this meeting, I got to do this, I got to do that, and you don't haven't even gotten dressed yet or washed your face. you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so you're operating on fumes and you're not getting enough rest. And in those moments, it's like, okay, whoop, it's time to reset. It
yeah,
is time to reset. One of two things need to happen, or both. Either you give yourself the space that you need to reset, or you start to embody some courage and have the difficult conversations that you may need to have to address the dynamics that are taking place.
yeah. Yeah, I would add to that. For me, I would definitely say micromanaging with good intentions. Like that
Mhm.
was definitely me, where I'm protecting my team, where I feel like I'm protecting them, but I'm also controlling every single detail. So I'm saying, hey, here's what you're gonna do, send it to me, then let me do what I do to make sure it looks all good, then send it. Like my intentions are good because I want to make sure that they look good.
But
However,
nine times out of 10, there's a level
I'm
of
not
fear.
giving them exactly. I'm not building their confidence, by just letting it just go because I'm not allowing them to grow in that moment. The other
Mhm.
one that I used to really gaslighting with kindness, it's not that bad when it really was. Like gaslighting, you have to be able to have those transparent conversations, and I think that's where we kind of get over, go get over to the hump, to the other side of it, of what it looks like whenever you've actually survived it and you're coming on the other side of it. Is you're not gaslighting them with kindness and telling them that it's not actually bad. You're having transparent conversation. You're transparently communicating with them by sharing either your experiences that you've actually happened when it comes to the trauma that you experience, just like Cynthia and I have done throughout this chat today, and being intentionally vulnerable, modeling what healthy emotional communication looks like, expression looks like.
Here's a caveat.
Because
I hate to cut you off, but here's a caveat on that. And it's something that I have learned over the years, especially as a woman.
mhm,
I do agree in being vulnerable. I do
as
agree in being transparent.
as a woman or as a woman of color.
Both,
Okay.
both. Um, and I say that because you, one of the things that I have started to do when I am intentional about having those vulnerable conversations is, one, I'm clear on what I'm about to communicate. If I'm leading with the fact, I'm going to say, this is a fact. This is what I can prove. This is what I know to be true. If I'm leading with an emotion, I'm going to tell you that I am aware that this is an emotion that I'm expressing and not a fact. And I say that because oftentimes there's a stigma that, oh, they're just being too emotional. Oh, they're always angry, or oh my God, they're just so sensitive, or they can be too kind and this and that and the other, right? So I do agree, when you're having a conversation, you need to be transparent, to create the boundaries, come from a place of vulnerability, but make it clear that that's what you're doing. And an example of that is, I'm going to share something with you, and I am being very transparent in my experience, and I'm letting you know that this is coming from a place of vulnerability, but it is my experience, and I feel it's important that I share it. And that way, you have created the boundaries. They understand that you have awareness around what's taking place.
Yeah. And so I would say too that it's what Cynthia's saying, however, meet them where they're at. Like
Mhm.
As she was sitting there saying that, I wouldn't necessarily talk to a Gen Zer like that, because that's just not how they communicate in their, so you're whatever intentional vulnerability is, whatever that looks like, you meet whoever you're talking where you're at. And
Correct.
so, when it comes to expressing that, because that to me is, now you're become more conscious with, you become more of a more conscious leader, and that's more of a strength, because now what you've actually done too for yourself is that you've survived and you've actually healed from your trauma, and you're not projecting that on them. You're actually, this is what it looks like whenever you are starting to move forward and not allow whatever that traumatic experience hinder you back.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from with different generations and understanding your audience,
Hmm.
right? But however you frame it, it's just being intentional in creating awareness when you're leading with facts versus when you're leading with emotion.
Hmm.
I know we're over time, so clearly we are very passionate about this topic, right? We recognize corporate PTSD. We've experienced it and we are very passionate to help you heal from toxic leadership, to help you, reclaim your power, to rebuild your confidence in the workplace. And for whatever has happened, just know that there is hope on the other side. And being very consciously aware of how you're internalizing that and how you might be projecting that trauma.
Hmm.
And one thing to try to do every day is just celebrate the small wins. You have done something that equates to success. Capture it, write it down, put it on a post it note, talk it, say it out loud to yourself. However you do it, celebrate the small wins and reclaim your confidence, even with whatever you have experienced in a toxic work environment. That's my
All
two
right,
cents.
is
That's
that
not my
is
torch.
is that
That's
is
not my
that your
torch.
is that your light in the torch? Is that
It's not quite. I did have something a little more eloquent, a little more polished, uh, for lighting the torch. So if you're still on, we do this thing where we want to light each other's torch and light your torch. So
Mhm.
hopefully you've been able to take something away from today's conversation and apply it in your professional life. But one thing that I intentionally captured for this conversation is to say that tonight we are choosing to lead with trust and not fear, to build with hope, not harm, and to carry forward not the pain, but the power that we gained from it. And that's how we light each other's torch, because I firmly believe there is a lesson to be learned in every experience that we have.
100%. I like that. I like that. There's a lesson to be learned in every experience.
Yes.
Um, so I would say for mine, because I had to write it down too.
Mhm.
Your your healing is not just personal; it's political. As leaders,
Mhm.
you want to sit here and think that every single time that you choose growth over protection, you're paving the way for the people that's behind us, to allow them to walk into their power. And so I just want to encourage you, as we are ending out this chat for this month, is to think about the steps that we said, think about our own situations that we've had to overcome, and the tips that we've given you to be able to identify exactly what these, with when it comes to trauma, what it looks like. But most importantly, we could give you all the tips, the tools, and everything like that. However, it's really on you to take and choose, like, okay, this is good, but let me make something that makes sense for me. And whatever that makes sense to you, again, like I said, it's your choice when it comes to your growth over protection, but that's for you to decide.
100% there. So, to those who joined us, thank you. We certainly appreciate you. And as always, leave us comments. Tell us if it resonated with you, what you gained from it, and what you want to hear more about. As you can see, streaming below, where you can find this live on YouTube. And trust me, we have had some great conversations in this fireside chat. So go on YouTube and check it out, catch up, and then let us know what you want to hear more about. And we'll be back in August, third Thursday of August. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.